I hope you're enjoying the weekend. Another Superhero Saturday is coming at you right now. Welcome back to Brickscale Studio. My name is Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me again for another episode of Build the Classic 1966 Batmobile. So today we're going to be building the steering mechanism and attaching that to the arms and rods that we put in place in an earlier episode. And then we're going to be working on the drive shaft, and we'll be connecting the gearbox to the rear axle. So again, focusing back there on the rear of the car where we have been for the last couple episodes. And then in the Lego version, again, we're still focusing on the rear in that vehicle as well. Also, before we get into the build portion, at the very start of the build portion in issue 35, I note that we moved from the TV series from season 1 to season 2 and sort of wondered when that happened. It actually just happened in that issue. Issue 35 marks the first episode of season 2 for the TV series. So let's get into the build. Here is issue 35. And we are into season 2. I'm not sure when we hit that, when we passed that end of season 1, but I just noticed that. All right, so today we are going to be building the gears for the steering mechanism and attaching that to the arms and rods that we've already completed earlier. Yep. So we're going to attach it right there. So here's the parts pack for issue 35. All right, so once again, because there's a few small parts in here, I'm going to leave it in the tray. So just so we know what we're dealing with, this is the steering gear housing top. This is the sector gear. This is the worm gear. This is the steering gear housing bottom, the steering shaft, and the universal joint. So those are the parts that we are working with today. So first thing we want to do is to build the gearbox. So we want the steering gear housing bottom and the sector gear. And these parts all are metal, by the way. Okay, so we are going to turn this over. And this is going to sit right in here. I mean, it will sit in there. But now we want to take the worm gear, which is this one. And we want to make sure that these gears interlock there. Now we want the steering gear housing top, and we are going to slide that over that shaft, and that is going to go right on like so. Okay, and that's going to go in with 2 AM screws. Alright, so now we have those in there nice and tight. Now we want to take the universal joint, and we want to secure this in with ZM screws. So screw-wise, we're going from A to Z. We have AM screws and ZM screws. Okay. So now we're going to take our steering shaft, and we are going to attach it to the U-joint. And again, with ZM screws. Okay, so that is that piece. So now we need to bring over the car and that is going to go in there just like so. And that's going to go in with some AM screws. So let me get those ready. And those are in there tight. And now we need to flip the car over. And we need to line this piece up right on top of there. And that's going in with another AM screw. Oh my goodness, that was a struggle. The struggle is the pin that sticks up that you are screwing this into is sort of square with a screw hole in the middle. Now the underside of this top piece is also square, so you have to make sure that you have the two pieces aligned so that this can sit down on top of it and then you can screw it in. So that took about 15 minutes to get that all figured out because of course you can't see anything, so you just have to kind of go by feel, tweak it a little, go by feel, and then it finally seats in there, and then you just take your screw and screw it in. All right, so that is it for this issue. And so we have attached this, which again they are calling the steering mechanism. So we have that all in place now. So on to issue 36. Here is issue 36. All right, so we are assembling the drive shaft, and then we're going to connect it to the gearbox and the rear axle. So it looks like we have more of these universal joints and these drive shafts. And again, we're going to be attaching it to the car. So there's the parts pack for issue 36. Okay, so here are the parts. And again, just to go over them, we have the front drive shaft A, front drive shaft B. We have two universal joints. We have a center support bearing. And then we have the rear drive shaft. Oh, this is the center support bearing, and this is the drive shaft bearing. And then this is the rear drive shaft. And then we had a ton of AP screws. So, all right, first thing we want to do is take this piece and a universal joint. And like the other parts pack in the previous episode where all that was metal, this appears to be plastic. Because like I said, we got a ton of AP screws. So we know that when it ends in a P, the screw ends in a P, that means you'll be going into plastic. So we want to get these universal joints in. Okay, so we got both sides started, so let's just tighten those down. Now again, these are plastic, so be careful. So we got that in. Now we want to take this piece, which is the rear drive shaft, and we want to attach it to this piece, and again, that's with some AP screws. Okay, so there we got those pieces in. Okay, so now we want to take, so there are two pieces, and I'm sure we're going to be enclosed, like we're going to be putting these together like this. One has holes, one has lugs, so you want the one with the lugs, and you want to fit this in there just like so. And then, yes, we want to enclose that with, again, of course, I mean, what else could it be? They only gave us AP screws, so that's what we're working with today. Just want to make sure, again, that these are tight, but don't over-tighten. So now that's held in there. So be sure that you check and double check your instructions. So we needed to fit this piece onto this shaft before we enclosed. So no worries. All right, now let's get this over. And then again, remember this sits down in this little channel. All right, there we got it. So now we want to take the U-joint. All right, so that is in there. Okay, so now we're done with the parts. So now we need to bring back the vehicle. Okay, so this one is going to go in this side, and that one's going to go in that side. So pretty straightforward, again, with AP screws. Okay, so this might be a little tricky to get started at first. Okay, or not. See, I always do that. When I always say, oh, this should be super easy, it turns out to be crazy difficult. And when I say, oh, this is going to be hard, yeah, it turns out it's super easy. So I think I said in a previous episode, yeah, when I say those things, yeah, don't even pay attention. All right, there we go. So we're going to do the same thing back here. All right. And that is the end of issue 36. So let's move on to the Lego portion. So here is the Lego version. In the last episode, we were working on this component. So today we're going to be tackling steps 102 through 108. Or actually, I'm sorry, 103 to 108. Okay, that is it for the Lego portion. So obviously we finished this component, installed that, and put on some of this detail. I love how everything in the Bat universe has to be, at least in the 1966 Batman universe, everything has to be labeled. So we have Bat Chute, Nail Spreader, Mobile Crime Computer, everything has to have a label. So that is it for the Lego portion. All right, so here we are. So for obviously the Lego version, we did this, finished this component, and then we did some trim work back here and added some labels. So for the part work build, we added the steering gears, and then we added the drive shaft here. So that is it for this episode. Okay, so all in all, a pretty easy build. We did have that sort of weird, when we attached that steering mechanism, trying to line up the underside connection with the square gear and trying to get that all aligned, but we got it in the end. And then, of course, my little mess up where I've assembled the drive shaft without putting the bearing piece on first, so we had to redo that part. But other than that, it was no problem. So let's get into the summary. So for the scale model version, we completed 14 steps and used 13 parts. For the Lego version, we completed 8 steps and used 20 parts, which gives us a total to date of 210 steps and 246 parts for the scale model, and 230 steps and 589 parts for the Lego version. Like I said, pretty simple episode, nothing too crazy. Before I let you go, I will just say stay tuned for Thursday. We have another old is new again, sort of a newer set based off an older set coming up on Thursday, so be sure to check that out. And until we see each other again, as always, remember to like, share, subscribe, comment. But subscribing really helps, and liking the videos really helps them get noticed in the algorithm. So if you could do that, that would help me out. Plus, as I've noted before, we're doing, I'm trying to hit these subscriber milestones. And as we hit them, there'll be giveaways for you to be eligible for. So be sure to, stay tuned for those. And until I see you again, happy building, take care, be kind to each other, and I'll see you soon.